All right, we're going to get going here. So, thank you for being here. And also, thank you to the people who put some gratitudes in there, which I was actually going to call you guys out for a minute because, like, I had one in there for a minute. But so let me just kind of run through those. So, the first one is from Kelly. Now, Kelly's my good friend. In fact, his really close friends actually call him Steve, which is actually an inside joke there. But I was in California all last week training, and Kelly was in class, and I know who he is. And for whatever reason, halfway through the week last week in California training, I looked over and just said, I want to call you Steve for some reason. So anyway, that's why I said that, Steve. So anyway, Kelly put in here gratitude that he's grateful for his sunshine or for sunshine and his dogs. Julie is grateful for this morning for good counsel and good books to read, which inspire and provide wisdom and learning and growth. I love that too. Thank you. Let's see. Brenda Lee, grateful for the days with her sweet mom would say, today is the first day of the rest of your life. We can all start anew today. I love that. Thank you. And then Kelly just responded back, thanks, Richard. He called me Richard. So yeah, I guess. All right. So, hey, here's what I want to talk about today with you guys. So thanks for being with me. But what I wrote down some ideas, and actually I was just joking with the people that are live here in the class. I just asked them, hey, what should I talk about? And I said that like 20 seconds before we turned off the music. So they gave me some good ideas. So thank you, Rich, for the ideas. But I actually had written down some things. So here's what I want to talk about with you guys is a great real estate career doesn't just happen. So kind of just think about that as we go through and talk about some of these things. A great real estate career does not just happen. So what's going to happen in order for you to have a great real estate career is that it's built on a wide variety of work habits, some discipline, and some beliefs. So just kind of keep that in mind as we go through and talk about this. And so what I want to share with you today, something that has always been a little bit fascinating to me is what are the characteristics, what are the things that top producing agents do, or what are the things that top producing agents have, those type of things. And so I've written down a number of ideas. Now, I'm not going to tell you the number that I have written down because I don't know how many we will get through or not. And what I've found is if I told you, hey, I've written down X number of things and I only get halfway through, then somebody's going to say, well, what are the rest? So which is fine. So here's what I'll do. If I don't get through them all next week, I will finish the list. So how's that? So here's what I want to talk about. So a good sales career in real estate doesn't just happen. It's built on these habits, disciplines, and beliefs. So here's the first one. Top producing agents are extremely positive. So that's the first thing I would tell you that I have noticed in my years of training and spending time with agents is top producing agents are extremely positive. Now, here's the thing. They are extremely positive in the good times as well as the bad times. See, I remember in 2008, 2009, and actually even I could say now, last year in 2020, I remember as COVID was hitting, but if we go back to 2009 after the collapse of the market because of these fake loans that were all out there, where you could just go say, I just want a loan and I can afford to pay it back. And because you said you could afford to pay it back, they would give you a loan. Well, I remember panicking in that moment and feeling like, uh-oh, what's going to happen to real estate? Well, a little bit that happened for me even last year in March, first part of April last year. I was feeling a little bit like, uh-oh, like this might be the end of real estate as we know it, and nobody's ever going to buy a house again. Well, here's what I will tell you that I've learned, though, is the top producing agents remained extremely positive throughout all of that. Top producers remain positive. And here's the other thing that comes from that I noticed is in 2009, 10, and even this last year, it's interesting because the top producing agents who have this extremely positive mindset are also the ones whose business increased dramatically over those periods of times. And so going back to 2009, which is the first time that I noticed this, there was an agent at the company that I worked with that she would typically make somewhere in the $300,000-$400,000 a year. Well, at the end of 2009, all of a sudden her income had gone up to $750,000. So she essentially doubled her income in this time when most people were panicking and running. So top producers stay extremely positive. So why? Why are they more positive even in the bad times? Well, here's part of what I would say is because they know there will be less competitors. See, I think the market that we're in right now, in the public's mind, would look at it and think, wow, it's such a great market that things are just happening and houses are selling and prices are going up like crazy. That people would look at that and feel like, well, as a result of that, agents are just killing it. But there are a lot of agents struggling in this business. And I believe as a result of this, they're going to end up leaving the business. So even though as good as the market is, we're going to see people leaving. Well, top producing agents are excited because they know they're going to be less competitors. So here's the other thing is, how do they remain positive? So that's the other thought that I wanted to hit on is, how do they remain positive? Well, part of it is take a look at the people that you are hanging out with. If you are hanging out with people who are negative, who have negative things to say, that are constantly bringing you down, you need to get out of that. See, we are a product of our environment. And in fact, if you have not read the book, Outwitting the Devil by Napoleon Hill, I actually, so I on Monday drove to St. George. And so for you guys that are in California, it's about a 4-hour drive to get there. So I on Monday left and drove to our St. George offices. I was there Monday, Tuesday, and then yesterday, and drove back yesterday. So I spent basically 8 hours over the last few days in the car driving. Well, I decided I was going to listen to Napoleon Hill's Outwit the Devil. And in listening to that, if you haven't read it or listened to it, you should go do that. In that, basically what's happening is Napoleon Hill is having a conversation with the devil. And the devil is revealing to him, to Napoleon Hill, all of his tricks of the trade, basically, that he uses to bring us down. Well, one of the things that he talks about is that we are a product of our environment. So if you're going to hang out with people who are negative, you're going to be negative. So if you want to change it, you got to go get around people who are positive, because that's what's going to change that for you. And you have to force yourself to do these kinds of things. See, it is more natural. In that book, he talks about that basically what the devil in this scenario that Napoleon Hill had, his job is to get you to become a drifter, basically. If he can get you to drift, and then he wins. So we got to stay out of that by hanging out with people that are going to create these positive things. And so what are you reading? What are you listening to? Those are the things that are going to create how positive of an attitude you have. All right, so now number 2, related to the positive attitude, is that they think big. Top producing agents are big thinkers. And that's just in life in general. They just tend to think big. So they think about a bigger number of sales, a bigger number of listings, more closings, more checks, more investments. See, everything that they think about is about thinking bigger. The only time it isn't better is if you're thinking that it's not going to get better. If that makes sense. So you got to think big. So what goes on in your head becomes an expression of what your life becomes. See, that's the whole point. When we read that Napoleon Hill self-confidence formula, the whole point of that is, what are you thinking about? Because it's going to translate into what becomes from your life. So be excited to be around people who have more than you. See, part of, if you want to think big, is you got to get yourself to be around people who have more than what you have. And you can then start to ask yourself these questions of, how did they do it? How did they get there? And you can start to ask them those questions as well of, how did you do it? How did you get there? See, I remember probably a year and a half ago-ish, maybe 2 years ago, John Maxwell came and did a little presentation here at a church in Salt Lake. And it was on a weekday evening, and a bunch of us here from the office went and listened to him. And in that meeting, he talked about that he always wanted to take people to lunch who were bigger thinkers than he was. And then he had a list of questions that he wanted to ask them is, what do they think about? What was the last book they read? What advice would they give to somebody who is not where they're at in order to get where they're at? See, that's part of it is we have to think big, and we're going to do that by hanging out with people who think bigger and being able to ask them questions that are going to be about how they got there, which will then help you know how to get there. All right, so that's number 2, is think bigger. Number 3 is going to be the 80-20 rule. So think about the 80-20 rule in terms of this. Top producing agents spend 80% of their time and their career, their real estate business is focused on listings. Now, you know how crucial that is in today's market. If you have a listing, you essentially have a paycheck. Versus right now in today's market, if you're working a buyer, your skills have got to be a lot better. So how much time are you spending on getting listings? See, focus on the things that are going to bring you the highest return. So I get it, and I know it's important, and it takes both a buyer and a seller to have a transaction, meaning that at the end of the day, really buyers or sellers are equal in terms of the paycheck, meaning you got to have both in order to get paid. But your highest return on your time is typically going to be spent in working listings. So what are you doing in terms of working listings? And I will tell you, the biggest thing that I would say you should be doing, and this goes back to what Tina Hare talked about on Tuesday, if you were on Morning Ascent, is door knocking. She's still making $3 million a year, essentially $3 million a year. I don't know what the final number was, but somewhere around 3 million, still goes door knocking. So again, go back to the last thing I just said, they think big. Well, if you were to sit down with her and ask her, what should I be doing to go get listings? I have a feeling she would tell you, you probably ought to be out knocking on some doors. And she has basically spent her time, picked an area where she's working that door knocking it over and over and over again. So how much time are you spending in your business that is geared towards generating new listings? See, that's what you've got to ask yourself, because that's where top producing agents are spending their time. All right, next, number 4. Number 4 that top producers do is they have high levels of internal accountability, or we could call that discipline, and external accountability. See, top producers know that if they can't get themselves to just do it by their discipline, they're going to go out and get some accountability to hold them accountable to it. See, when you're held accountable, you'll be pushed, or you could think pulled, either way you want to look at it. Either you're getting pushed or somebody's pulling you to a higher level in your business. So what kind of discipline do you have set up, or what kind of accountability do you have in place that is going to help you get to that level? Because here's the thing, after every transaction that you close, you could think of it as you are essentially unemployed. See, you should have a next deal in process at all times. Too many times we do this with our business, where we make a lot of money, then we don't have any money. We make a lot of money, we don't. Well, that typically comes from not following a schedule. So part of your accountability, and part of what I would say in terms of top producing agents that they have done, is they have a schedule set up and then accountability around the schedule. So it's not just about high levels of accountability in life, although that is it, but in terms of your schedule. Do you have a schedule set up, and have you set up some accountability around that, whether it's internal or external accountability around your schedule? Have you set that up? See, Judy actually, the daily message yesterday, I believe it was, Judy put out, was that you should be having your business plan for June, a mini business plan put in place for June. Stopping and looking at on that, what are the days you're going to work, and what are the times you're going to work, and who's going to hold you accountable to doing that work? So that's number 4, high levels of accountability. Number 5 that I wrote down is that top producing agents know how to remove their ego from the process. See, I have always joked about and said that anytime somebody will talk about doing limited agency, or some people call it dual agency, where you're representing both the buyer and the seller, there are some people that I will joke with on that. Well, let me back up. There's some people that say they would never do it, because, in fact, I had an attorney tell me once, I don't understand how that can work. That would be like me going to court and telling the judge, Your Honor, I'm going to be representing the plaintiff and the defendant today, and trying to stand up and work for both sides. He just said, you can't do that. I don't understand how it would work. Well, see, I've always said, I like it because the agent that I have to deal with, me, is not going to be an issue. So many times the other agent in a transaction creates the problem. So are you able to remove your ego out of the transaction in order to put the transaction together? See, get focused on the income or the profit or the commission or the closing that will take place as a result of what you're doing, not letting your ego get in the way to show how great you are. See, it's no different than every one of you guys knows when you've had a buyer and their parents or a sibling or somebody shows up at the inspection, they want to show how smart they are and how brilliant they are about houses, and they try to kill the transaction because their ego gets in the way. See, top producers know how to remove the ego, that it's not about that, it's about putting together a transaction. All right, so get the ego out of the way. Next, number 6. Great agents are experts at their scripts that they're going to use and sales techniques. So they're great at scripts, or you could say it as their sales skills. So how much time are you putting into, see, you have a script. You might not recognize you have a script, but you have a script. You're following a script. You tend to say the same things over and over again. So the question is it effective? And if it is, great. If it's not, then what do you need to work on and change that? See, we all have them. We say, I don't want to use a script, or I don't want to sound like a canned presentation, but I promise you, you have one already. It's just how effective is it? So great agents have figured out good scripts and sales techniques that they use that allow them to get to the business. All right, next, 7, I think it is. Number 7, they role play and practice. Top producers will role play and practice. See, again, I mentioned I was down in St. George. Brian Burnett, who's our #1 agent in Utah, he role plays and practices every single day. It's tied back to, do you have a schedule put in place that you're following, that you have some discipline around? If you have that set up, you should also have it put in there, role play and practice. I can't help but think, again, I always have to tie this back to sports, and I'll do basketball since the playoffs are going on for the NBA right now. I can't help but think that today, every one of those teams that are in the playoffs that are getting paid millions of dollars are going to be practicing today. So here's my question for you. Why don't you practice? And answer that in your own head. Why? Why do you not practice? Is it because you just think you don't need to, or what? But why don't you practice? Because here's what I will tell you. Most of us, me included in this, don't practice enough. We are not putting enough time and effort into the practice. So do you know how to do what you're supposed to do as well as you should? And hopefully that makes sense. Do you know how to do what you're supposed to do as well as you should? Okay, that's the question, is do you know how to do what you're supposed to do as well as you should? And top producing agents can answer yes to that. See, practicing less is not going to get you more. So it's more practice. Getting better at the way that you present is going to make a big difference, both on the phone and in terms of your presenting, in terms of on your appointments. All right, and then here's the last one that I'm going to, well, no, I'm going to do 2 more. I'll do 2 more. But so that way I kind of, now you know there was at least 2 more. All right, so here's number 8, I think. They work daily on getting listing appointments, not developing leads. See, they're prospecting for appointments, not prospecting for leads. See, this business is not just about developing leads, although I am a big believer on you got to prospect on 2 parallel tracks, meaning if somebody's not ready now, then you want to capture them and do some things, but get focused on the appointment first. That's your primary objective. So they have a primary objective of setting an appointment, not developing leads. And then here's the last one we'll do for today is this. They track their numbers. So Jason Carlson next week, I don't know if he's on Morning Ascent or not, but he is going to be talking about tracking your numbers next Wednesday. So top producers track their numbers. See here, I had a guy that I used to work for years ago that would say numbers are the center of the universe, which it used to drive me crazy when he would say that all the time. Numbers are the center of the universe. But here's what I will tell you is they do tell a story. Numbers don't lie, only you do. See, it's the people who put them down, that write them down, maybe are the ones who lie, but the numbers don't lie if you'll tell the truth. So are you tracking your numbers to see, are you getting better? See, that's what's going to help you know if you need to do more practice or not. Is, are you tracking? How many contacts are you taking to set an appointment typically? And how many appointments are you setting each week? How many of those are leading to presentations? And how many of those are turning into contracts signed? So are you tracking your numbers? Top producing agents, they know their numbers. They track them, and they know that the numbers will tell a story. So they may not be the center of the universe, but they do tell a story if you'll track your numbers. All right, so here's the question for you. I've given you, I think, 9 things to write down. What I want you to ask you to do is to take a look at those, and which one will you work on? Which one will you spend the month, or maybe 2, 1 or 2, pick 1 or 2 of those that for the month of June, you are going to focus on improving and getting better at any of those. I might recommend, if you're number 1, that if you are not keeping the positive attitude at all times, that's the one that you work on. But hey, for you, decide which one of those or 2 do you need to work on, and will you commit to working on through the month of June? Would love for you to throw it in the chat box, or you can text me if you want, share it with me, whatever you want to do, but focus on making those changes. And here's what I will promise you. If you will do that, you will see an increase in your business. So thanks for being with me. Let's wrap it up with our closing affirmations. Go out and make it an awesome day. I probably won't see you before the Memorial Day weekend for most of you. So enjoy that, and be grateful for those who have provided this great land that we have to live in because of the sacrifices. So that's the idea of this Memorial Day, is remembering them. All right, let's close it up with our closing.